about an issue that is very near and dear to my heart because fundamentally I care about Korea.
투입이 끝나면 다시 한번 카드를 대주십시오.
It's gross.
투입구가 닫힙니다. 배출하신 양은
0.85 킬로그램입니다. Alright guys, so I got in big trouble with the Korean right-wing protesters in Korea today on Twitter. Now, I want to make it clear right off the bat. I actually am a big supporter of their positions, their moves, and a lot of the things that they believe in. But I'm also not a blind supporter of every single dot and tittle of their position. Now, it should be noted that Koreans are going through a pretty rough time right now. There's a lot of controversy and things like that. But a lot of what Koreans in Korea are struggling with is of their own making. It's kind of like the GOP in America, where the right leaning party in America was so hyper-focused on, hey Dano, how are you doing? They were so hyper-focused on neocon and foreign interventionism and things of that nature that they've completely lost the plot on what the average American actually cares about. And the same thing is happening in Korea. Now, I don't say this with a lot of I'm super happy about this, great, you know? It's unfortunate that Koreans have basically given up their sovereignty in exchange for GDP, rapid GDP growth and everything else. And if I were in charge of Korea tomorrow, I would advocate for a return to monarchism, a return to tradition, and a return to a lot of the things that made Korea what Korea is in the first place. The reason Koreans were so industrious was because of the product of the culture of monarchy. The Korean monarchy, especially under the Korean Empire, was a net benefit to Koreans everywhere. There was national and cultural unity under the monarchs of Korea. Now, does that mean that it was perfect? No system is perfect. But it was more unified as a people, more unified with a vision for the future. The problem with the Korean right wing is they have no vision. They have no vision for the future. It's the same thing with the GOP in America. The GOP in America has no vision for the future. It wasn't until Donald Trump came in and basically completely curb stomped all of them and shocked them all that they realized that the American people actually want policies and progress. I know that's a scary word to conservatives, but they actually want progress. The difference is that conservatives have always kind of labeled themselves in their opposition to things. So there was always, we're in opposition to this. We don't want change. We don't want this. We're not going to do that. We don't like this. Rather than say, we like all of these things, but here's what we're going to do to continue to move our country forward. Here's our vision for the country. Here's what we are going to pursue as a nation. And so right-wing parties all throughout the world have struggled with messaging. And the reason they've struggled with messaging is because they fundamentally just don't understand people. They have this kind of robotic view of the individual, this kind of robotic view of people, and it doesn't work. So that's the first thing that needs to be said right off the bat. Now, with that being said, America is not a country that can be replicated in all places. So a lot of the right wing in Korea have this weird obsession with America. Now, that's not to say that I, as an American, don't appreciate the close alliance that we have with the Koreans. But not every single policy in Korea is going to be like, not every single thing in Korea is benefited by just blind support for anything America, right? Having a close alliance with America is useful in that it allows Koreans to have better negotiating power with other powerful rivals. But that doesn't mean you need to be antagonistic towards your neighbors. There is no benefit, zero benefit to, now again, this, I'm going to qualify this in a second. So any Koreans that are listening, I'm qualifying it in a second. Just give me a chance to actually make my case. There's no benefit for the right wing in Korea to be hyper antagonistic towards China. I know it's controversial to say. There's no benefit. Now, does that mean that Korea should just blindly accept mass migration from Chinese people, or allow for a ton of Chinese influence in their nation? Absolutely not. But China is one of the world's largest economies. It does no one any good to be antagonistic to someone who is literally 2 feet away from your border. Listen, at the end of the day, if China or Russia or North Korea wants to attack South Korea, you guys are ultimately kind of on your own. America will help insofar that it will eventually get there, but it's not going to help you in the immediacy. If they really wanted to, they could level 90% of Korea before the United States even turns their carriers around from the Caribbean. That most of our carriers are in the Caribbean right now, or at least a huge chunk of them. By the time we get any troops there, we land them, we get the logistics all taken care of, we produce enough weapons and ammunition to even do anything, your country's leveled. So South Korea, yes, it's important to have the alliance with America because it gives you some sort of, arm's length approach. It keeps people at arm's length. But at the end of the day, it's not going to stop your country from being leveled if that's what people wanted to do. But here's the good thing about South Korea. There's no interest. There's no interest. None of the countries around you have any interest in taking over South Korea. You know how logistically insane and difficult it would be for any of those countries to conquer the other? Even North Korea, who is culturally very similar to South Korea, because they're both Korean, they speak the same language, even them taking over wouldn't be reasonably possible. This is why North Korea has publicly moved away from any sort of reunification goals. They're not opposed to, from my understanding, they're not opposed to, peaceful negotiation or normalizing relations, but that's not the same thing as, reunification. And so it's a problem. It's a major problem. And no one in Korean circles are talking about this because they're all so busy advocating for, they're all getting hung up about North Korea and China and communist influence. Listen, China's not communist. They haven't been meaningfully communist in 30 to 40 years. Now, does that mean that I support their current system of government? Not necessarily, but they're not communist. No country has stayed communist more than a single generation after the revolution. They all realize how bad of idea just straight up communism is, and they normally take on hybrid models of capitalism and crony capitalism and fascism. I know they don't like that word, but they take on various forms of that over time. That's the reality. That's what ends up happening. And so South Korea right now, the right wing in South Korea, they're all doing these huge protests in Seoul constantly. I mean, every day it's like a new day where they're going around waving banners and you know, saying CCP out and all that stuff. And I don't necessarily disagree. But what is the policies that you're advocating for? What are the things that you're going to get people like excited to vote for you? Where are those? Are there any policies that you're using to get people excited to vote for the right wing in Korea? They're nowhere to be found. There's not a single good policy being advocated for that is going to get young people excited to vote for the right. You need young people. Secondly, where is the right wing talking about the existential crisis that is the birth rate crisis? And what are their 10-point policy proposal to help reverse the birth rate problem in Korea? Where is that? Where are they out there stumping every single day saying, if we don't fix this problem, this birth rate problem, we as a country, it doesn't matter if you oppose North Korea or support North Korea, our country is dead. Where are they? They're nowhere to be found. The left isn't doing it. The left wing is so hyper focused on like stupid like internationalism and multiculturalism. They're useless, and they're not accomplishing anything either. I mean, he's more worried about prosecuting freaking church leaders, you know, than actually doing anything meaningful in terms of policy. What major policies or laws have been passed since Lee Jae-myung took over? Nothing. He hasn't done anything. He's a freaking completely useless politician, and he's corrupt, and it's self-evident that he is. But you can complain about that all day. But if you don't resolve the birth rate issue, if you don't have policies that are going to get people excited to vote for you, you're going to lose. The right wing in America was losing time and time and time again until Trump came along. Shut the F up, you incel. Yeah, okay, go. Your thing is automatically hidden. You realize I have moderation, idiot. By the way, I'm married with a child. I doubt you are. So again, where are the Koreans having babies? They're not. And if you don't have policies to reverse that, it doesn't matter how much you oppose North Korea. It doesn't matter. You could oppose North Korea all day long. Good morning. Good morning, Crazy California Fishing. I don't know what sister wife means. But if you oppose North Korea, then you should want your birth rates to reverse. You should want that. 25% taxes off for each kid you have. I would agree with that. I would even go further. There's only one city in Korea that actually has managed to have a positive birth rate number. Like they're above replacement rate. And it's a small little, I think it's Haenam. I want to say it's Haenam in the very southern part of Korea. It's about a city of, I think, just under 100,000 people. They've only managed that because they have a ton of robust policies. They promote womanhood. They make women feel like they're doing something hypercritical to society. They do women's marches where women take out their kids and they're going with strollers, pregnant women everywhere. They really praise that, right? They need that. Those types of policies need to be like the Conservative Party in Korea should be looking at that and saying, we're going to advocate for that policy everywhere, at all times, for, forever. Sorry. Hey, buddy, guess what? You know what happens when people don't offer anything of substance? You get blocked. hasn't pretty much every government program for benefits for having kids pretty much failed in every country? Well, no. So that's a mixed thing. So like I said, the policies in Hainam have actually worked, but it was coincided with policies to encourage not just monetary policies, but policies to encourage a different view of it in culture on the local level. And then Hungary has seen where they've stabilized the population now, and hopefully their policies start bearing fruit to actually increasing the population. So Hungary has actually stopped the death spiral, because Hungary used to be one of the lowest in the world, and now they're actually stopping the death spiral. So it remains to be seen. Russia has seen some progress as well on the local level, though again, you got to remember, a lot of this data, there is a lag effect with these policies, right? There's going to be a lag effect because it takes time for the policies to be implemented. It takes time for the public consciousness to understand that those policies exist. And frankly, it takes time for people to have babies. Most people are not having 1, 2, 3 right after each other. Normally it's 1, maybe wait a year or 2, 2, wait a year or 2, 3. That's at least 6 years. So any policy you implement has to be understood in the long term. There has to be a long-term like thinking on this that goes out for a period of time. You can't just say, oh, the policy didn't work, we threw money at the wall. Another problem with Korea is that they'll be like, oh, we've tried everything. And by tried everything, they throw money at the wall with a bunch of programs. They're like, oh, we threw a bunch of money at the wall and none of it worked. But the thing is that there's no way for them to measure success. Any policy that you're implementing has to have some sort of metric or measurement for success. It's like, for example, we know that getting people out of big cities and into more rural areas produces more children. So if you implement a policy that is encouraging young people, specifically young couples, to move out of the big cities and into the more rural areas and fixing the economies, like you said, that's a measurable thing. You can measure how many young people are moving out of Seoul. You can measure how many young people are taking advantage of a program like that. You can't really measure just saying, well, we're going to give a bunch of money to this department, and this department is going to give money to just women as like in a willy-nilly fashion. It just doesn't work that way. You have to change the perspectives on these things. And yes, part of it is that you need to fix the economy so that men can actually afford to have single income housing and stuff like that. Another thing Korea needs to do is just straight up a return to traditional architecture and traditional ways of living. These apartment blocks are just not sustainable for large families. Even if you get into a nice apartment block that is relatively expensive, that has 4 rooms, no, let's say it has a master and 3 bedrooms, right? That's still very cramped, because you don't have an office space then, and you have, let's say you have 3 kids, and each kid gets a room, and those rooms aren't very big. So it's like, there's nothing here that is actually like encouraging young people to actually have children. They're not having it. And so that is the big problem. So again, the right wing in Korea it's crickets. There's no 10-point policy plan. There's nothing like that. There's no like, hey, we're going to actually like give money to like studios to produce like K-dramas that are pro-family. You know how much it costs to produce a 16-episode drama? It costs between $1.4 and $2 million US dollars. 1.4 and 2 million for a 16-episode series. Why are they not flooding? I mean, for the amount of money that they spent on these pro-family policies that do nothing, they could have had like dozens and dozens and dozens of really high-quality pro-family content just being pumped out like crazy. but they didn't do it. So it's like it's failure after failure after failure for them to actually seize on anything. Now, that's just the birth rate issue. We're not even getting into the fact that the right wing in Korea has failed on like every other level. They have failed on tax policy. They failed on deportations. Now, illegal immigration isn't a massive issue in South Korea, thankfully, but there's still some of it. And, everyone's complaining, oh, all these Chinese immigrants now, they're all complaining about it. Well, where was Yoon? Yoon didn't need congressional approval from the congressional approval to start deportations. He could have been doing that his entire time in office. He sat back on his laurels and whined about the left being subversive. And yes, they were being subversive to his administration, but instead he whined like a baby, and then when he didn't get his way, he threw a hissy fit and tried to do a coup d'etat, essentially. And he failed because he wasn't popular. And why wasn't he popular? Because he didn't get anything done. He didn't get anything done. He failed to do anything meaningful the entire time he was in office. And there was reasons he was highly criticized. Now, again, that's not to say he deserves what happened to him. He had every right to do what he did, but you don't do it. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if you have a right to do something. If you do it and you don't have public support and public popularity, you're going to be rejected by the people. And the people rejected his attempt. Where were all of his supporters out there standing arm locked together to support his coup d'etat? They weren't there because no Korean was going to go to bat for something like that when he wasn't a popular president. And so now you have the right wing in Korea going Yoon again. We want Yoon released and him to be reestablished as president. Why? He failed. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, I don't think he should be in jail. I don't think he should be being prosecuted. But you guys need to find a new leader. Somebody who's actually going to be popular, who's younger. Don't get these geriatrics in charge anymore. Where are the non-geriatric politicians that are actually going to lead Korea with a vision, that are young, that have children, like a J.D. Vance? Where do they have a J.D. Vance? Jeez, guy. Freaking chill out. No one was freaking bolting through. Why are you honking like that? Freaking idiot. Gosh, they gotta chill out. It's like it didn't require, you could just one little tiny honk and you would have let them know, hey, yep, I'm going through. Gosh, people are such freaks. So I'm pretty much done with my rant here. It was only about a 20-minute rant, but Koreans, please, for the love of God, start having a future, a mindset of the future. Start finding politicians and starting organizations that are actually going to advocate for good policies. Where is your guys' TPUSA? Where is your guys' youth action committees? Where are you engaging with youth people? Where are you sending out people on the streets to do street interviews and do change my mind, Steve Crowder's type stuff? The right wing needs to get on the ball with where the media is today. The media landscape and where young people form their opinions about government and form their opinions about these things is on the internet. They don't find it on the mainstream media anymore. And in Korea, it was a little slow to the ball game, and the mainstream media in Korea still has a lot of influence. And honestly, they're mixed in terms of their biased or unbiased positions. So it is a mixed bag here in Korea. So I will say that it's better off than America media, but it's not much better. But even then, where is the right wing? What do they have going for them? It is a disaster zone. It's a freaking disaster. And I just got to say, guys, there's got to be something better for Korean conservatives. You got to do better. You have to do better. Now, at the end of the day, I am a foreigner here, and my opinion means basically squat, which is fine. But my daughter is Korean. She is a citizen. My wife is a Korean, and she is a citizen. And I want to see a country that is successful for them. So I have some skin in the game. So, anyways, I just wanted to say that, Korea has so much potential, and even despite all the issues going on with Korea right now, with the ridiculous current administration and their prosecutions on jailing pastors and bull crap like that, it's just like completely ridiculous. Um, Even with all of that, you guys have a great country. Korea is a great country. It's a beautiful country, great people. The culture is beautiful. The people are smart, lovely people. But you guys need to do better. And hitching your ride to America over all else is not going to be the solution. Korea needs to have its own independent geopolitical policy. And I think the best thing for Korea, and this is my opinion, the best thing for Korea is for it to have a geopolitically neutral stance between the three major powers in the world, because it's right in the center of those three powers. You got American hegemony, you got Chinese, and you got Russian. Those are the three major powers in the world today. There's no denying that. Anybody who does deny that and calls China and Russia paper tigers are lying to you. Korea needs to be that middleman who is able to balance their interests between the three of them. And that takes smart politicians who know how to balance the interests of those three countries for the benefit of Koreans. For the benefit of Koreans. America's interests are not always Korea's interests. China's interests are not always Korean interests. Russian interests are not always Korean interests. The reason you want to have a close relationship with Russia is because they have a formal defense alliance with North Korea. You don't think that having a closer relationship with Russia is going to actually help you guys in terms of your negotiating power with North Korea? You don't think that's not going to help? Of course it's going to help. You're not going to defeat North Korea. They have nuclear weapons. So we gotta look to the future for Korea, not constantly looking at 1950s Cold War era North Korea versus South Korea. Young people in Korea don't give a shit about that. I've talked to hundreds of them. None of them care about that anymore. Sure, some of them will say, I'm not a big fan of North Korea politically and all that other stuff, but they don't really want every single aspect of their politics to be centered on North Korea and China and America. Like, your average young Korean person goes, I don't give a shit about China or America or any of this. I want Korea first. I want Korea first. And the first thing, South Korea doesn't formally have nuclear weapons. Formally doesn't have nuclear weapons. They have weapons that are stored here but are controlled by America. So and that even is loose because weapon stockpiles move around a lot. So it's not completely not 100% accurate to say that, though I understand what you're saying. But the point of the matter is that neither North Korea or South Korea have, like, maybe 30 years ago this was true, but today North Korea and South Korea have no interest in, like, bombing each other out of existence. The best thing forward is to have a policy that benefits South Korea first, and then, if North Korea is antagonistic, you have to have a strong South Korea. It doesn't matter how antagonistic North Korea is. They're outbreeding you guys. They're outbreeding you guys. They're literally having more babies than you. In 20, 30 years, you guys are going to have a ton of geriatrics in these apartment complexes. All these apartment complexes are going to be filled with 50, 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds, and there's going to be, like, no young people. And meanwhile, North Korea has 2.3 children per family, I think, on average right now. I think last time I looked at the statistics, 2.3. That means that North Korea will just simply outbreed you. So if you care about South Korea, you have to have policies that prioritize your economy, prioritize all these things. That's the only thing that's the future. If you don't have babies, if you don't have pro-family policies, where's the right wing doing any of that? No, they're so focused on, communism. And listen, again, I am not a fan of China. Not a fan of North Korea's economic policies. I'm not a fan of Chinese economic policies. But there's no denying that China is an economic powerhouse and that North Korea has actually developed. over this time, and they have close relationship with Russia and China. So there's no getting rid of North Korea. Okay, there just really isn't. The Kim family is too in bed with Russia. Russia has a formal defense alliance with North Korea. That means North Korea gets attacked, Russia defends them, as long as it's not them being aggressive first, right? But that's all up into interpretation too, so that's a big issue. Like, who decides what's aggressive and what's not aggressive, right? So you don't want to do that. So what do? And so my solution is, focus on domestics. Focus on the domestic issues that are causing everyone to flood to Seoul. Everybody in Korea moves to Seoul. It's miserable. Miserable. Why is everything so expensive? Everyone lives in Seoul. You know, where are you reshoring domestic production of things? You know, are you reorienting the economy to be more pro South Korean so that young people can actually have opportunities in Korea, so they can have babies, right? Where are you guys re-engaging in traditional Korean architecture? You know, like, if I go to Korea, when someone comes to visit Korea, where do they go? They go to visit Hanok villages, and they go to visit like traditional Korean temples and things like that. Why do they do that? Because it speaks to the soul of a people. The soul of a people. And when you lose that and you're all living in apartment blocks and apartment complexes, and don't get me wrong, those are nice when it's like highly dense and in a very specific area. So 100%. So my solution and my thoughts are, the Korean right wing needs to advocate for new building standards across the board to promote pro-family housing. So that can be modernized Hanok style apartments and villages and things like that. They need to encourage businesses to move out of Seoul. I mean, basically, they just need to say, you're moving out of Seoul, and if you don't like it, you can kick rocks. They need to advocate for better public transportation being developed outside of Seoul. Less stations need to be in Seoul and more stations in other cities, in third-tier cities. They need to advocate for better local industries. So they need to figure out what are good local industries and figure out ways to get young people into those industries. They need to have policies that encourage young people to have babies. That means, I don't care if it means that for every baby that a family has, they get a huge stipend of cash, plus they get like tax breaks. There needs to be better policies for getting loans so they can buy a home, or they can build a home, or they can build a business. They need to get rid of like usury and things like that. There's all sorts of policies that the right needs to do. And I love Korea, but Yoon failed, and I don't want them to make the same mistakes. You know, learn from the mistakes Yoon made. Yoon was so focused on, the left is like causing problems and this really sucks, and China. And it's like, okay, great. I agree. It's not good what's happening. But how do you expect to win Koreans to support you if you're out here just whining all the time and you're not accomplishing anything? You know? Like, why didn't Yoon take, like, when he was in power, why wasn't he out there deporting every single illegal, Southeast Asian and Chinese person in Korea? Why wasn't he doing that? He had every I've looked this up. He had every authority to deport these people. You have laws on the books. He doesn't need to ask Congress to pass new laws. He can literally just start deporting people. He didn't do that, right? It's the same thing with the GOP in America. It's like the GOP for decades could have done shit, and they never did anything until Trump. Korea needs a new voice who actually cares about these issues, who is actually going to be like, no, we need to have a vision for the future. A vision for the future. So that's my little mini rant. Greetings. That is my little rant about Korea. I'm sorry if there are any Koreans that were maybe slightly offended by what I had to say. I'm not trying to be offensive, and I'm not trying to tell Koreans what to do. But I'm expressing frustration because my daughter is Korean. She goes to school in Korea. My wife is Korean. And I want to see Korea successful for them. I want to see it continue to be a country, you know. And if you don't have babies, you know, if you don't have babies and if you don't have policies that encourage young people to get out of Seoul and all these other things, Korea's going to slowly wither and die. And no one wants to see that. You know, who wants to see a country just become sad? And eventually you guys are going to be so destitute and poor because everyone's too elderly to work anymore, and you don't have enough young people, that North Korea can just waltz in and be like, oh, we're taking over now because you guys don't have any young people. Meanwhile, they're having 2.3 children per family. 2.3 on average. And Kim Jong-un is actively telling North Korean women, you need to start having babies. Why? Because he understands demographics is the future. The future is for those who show up for it. And those who show up for it have babies. If you don't have babies, you don't control the future. Your children and your children's children and your children's children's children will not have the power to do it. Why did Korea become an economic powerhouse as quickly as it did? It's not just because of economics. It's not just because of the United States. It's also because South Korea had a massive baby boom that coincided in the 60s and 70s, that coincided with their economic growth. 18-year-olds are a lot more economically active than a bunch of 50-year-olds. You know? But now, it's like, whoa, why does the economy suck? Well, maybe because there's no young people buying crap anymore. Oh, the housing market sucks. Well, that's because there's no young people buying it from you. You know, it's like, you have too many homes or you have too few homes. No, you want to have steady growth. It doesn't need to be a baby boom of like 10 children per family. But if you can just maintain 2.1 to 2.3 children per family, your economy will stay relatively stable. But right now, you don't have that. So, I don't know what to say other than that. Anyways, guys, I gotta go study. I will talk to you guys real soon. Maybe after I'm done doing some studies and stuff like that on my laptop, I'm going to do some work. Message me down below what you think, guys. God bless and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Go to church.